Welcome to another episode of Bugs, Drugs, and Genomes. This is Krista, and I'm so glad to be back with you for another episode of the podcast as we dive into another fascinating aspect of AMR, global health, and capacity strengthening. Today, we're talking to Carmen, a Senior Scientific Officer at the Global Capacity Building Group, about her favorite pathogen. We're also joined by a guest host today, Dafni, a microbiologist at the GloCap Research Group, who will be using her microbiology expertise to interview Carmen.
Hi, thanks, Krista, and thank you so much for joining me today, Carmen. Before we dive into all things staph, could you briefly introduce yourself and your background and work with the GloCap group?
Thank you, Daphne. So I'm a veterinarian by background, and I have worked in One Health projects, which means that we work with the health of animals and the environment and people and the intersection between those. And like you, I also specialized in public health by the Public Health Microbiology Fellowship of the ECDC. And at the Global Capacity Building Group at DTU, I am mostly focused on antimicrobial resistance.
Why did you choose the Staphylococcus aureus?
So I have worked with other very exciting species, but staph has a special place for me because it was the first bacteria I worked with and also the main focus of my PhD studies. So during my PhD, I tried to find staph in the nose of hundreds of animals, and that included mostly farm animals like pigs, but also some other more exciting species like I spent some time in Australia sampling marsupials, and I have sampled most species at the Copenhagen Zoo.
That's cool. But for students who are new to the topic, what exactly is Staphylococcus aureus and why is it so important in human and animal health?
Okay, so Staph aureus is an important bacteria. It's a type of bacteria that is found on the skin or nose of many people. Approximately 1 in every 3 or even more people have Staph aureus in their skin or in their noses, and they don't need to cause any damage. They can be your companion for life. But then sometimes it can attack and cause infections, and these can happen either by the same staph that you already have on your skin or in your nose, or because you came in contact with it from other sources.
But what allows it to shift between friendly neighbor and dangerous intruder?
Like most things in nature, there are several factors involved here. So on one side, we have the immune system of the person. Then we have to talk about the specific type of Staph aureus that you have, because some of them are more aggressive than others. And sometimes it's just a matter of access. So if the skin is broken, for example, because there is a wound, then it is easier for Staph aureus to get inside.
Is there anything else that you think makes staph very important?
Yeah, so since I started to explain that there are different types of staph, I can also say that some of the Staph aureus can cause infections in both humans and animals, and as such, it can move between these species. So it can be transmitted between humans and animals. But other types of staphs will only cause infection in either humans or animals, and these kind of staphs don't actually normally pass from one to the other. But more importantly, Staph aureus is also known to be a superbug when it becomes resistant to antibiotics. And many people know this as methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA. And when they carry this resistance, then treatment with antibiotics becomes more complicated.
Yes, I agree that MRSA is something that indeed many people have heard about. So can you tell us a bit more about what makes it such a big challenge?
One of the factors, apart that it's more difficult to treat, is that it's really good at surviving in the environment. So, for example, if a hospital has a problem with MRSA, sometimes they can struggle to get rid of it from the hospital environment. And that's why there has been reports of some outbreaks in hospitals. In Denmark and in other EU countries, there is a policy to prevent this from happening, actually, that consists on people being tested before they are scheduled for any treatment at the hospital, for example, if they need to receive surgery. And they will be tested, and if they are positive, then they will go through a decolonization treatment where they receive antibiotics and other measures to remove MRSA from them before they enter the hospital environment. So then they don't contaminate, for example, the operation room.
Yeah, that can be a bit stressful. It has happened to me to be tested, and I was curious when I was waiting for the results. But about MRSA again, is there any misconception that you often run into when teaching or communicating with people who are not scientists?
Yes, so from my veterinary perspective, I do think that there is some misconceptions related to the MRSA that comes from farm animals, because in countries like Denmark, where the prevalence of MRSA is relatively low compared to other countries, those that come from farm animals have received a lot of visibility, but they do not necessarily have to be the most dangerous, and in most cases is also not the most prevalent lineage found in human infections. So there are other types that are often more dangerous than the ones coming from animals.
Thanks a lot. And a more general question for students curious about working with microbiology, AMR, or pathogens like Staph aureus, what skills or mindsets do you think are the most important?
Yes, so you need to be ready to adapt to the bacterial life schedule, because you may find yourself in the lab working at hours that you did not expect. But more importantly, you need to be curious to understand all the details about this bacterial species or any bacterial species, because that will give you the whole picture on how to fight any bacteria or how to fight staph.
Thanks a lot, Carmen. So, Krista, what do you think about Staph aureus now yourself?
I actually feel a little more relieved after hearing what you said. I think I was one of those people who was afraid of MRSA, but I feel like I feel safer now. So thank you both for that. So I think then that we are done with our interview today, but I want to thank you both, Carmen and Dafni, for this really fascinating deep dive. It's pretty eye-opening to see how everything is connected and how complicated. And so I appreciate your time, and you're answering these great questions for us. We're going to wrap up the episode, but before we do, I have a quick quiz. My quiz question is, where does staph most like to live in your body? Is it A, in your lungs, B, in your toenails, or C, in your skin and nose? And the answer is your skin and nose. Great job, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today to another episode of Bugs, Drugs, and Genomes. Stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we continue to delve into our research group's work, AMR in policy and practice. And of course, we'll always talk about interesting career insights like we did today. Don't miss it. We'll see you next time.